These past 2 days, Harvey has been discussing and we have been practicing a cultivation of attention. And this cultivation of attention, which we will continue to practice a little bit today, is foundational for everything, as we have said. The more attention, presence, grounding we can bring to anything that we do, the more fully we can experience it, the more fully we can experience it. So we retain this interest in cultivating attention, and today we're going to use that base of attention, which we still continue to cultivate, as a base for understanding Refuge and Bodhicitta. These two verses that we've been singing from the beginning, and today we're going to talk more about how that goes and what it really means. We can say, most generally, I'll say it now and I'll probably say again, that in taking refuge, we have an opportunity to look into ourselves and into our situation in both an ordinary kind of sense and a very profound and actually ultimate sense. Refuge, like Bodhicitta, also has a kind of ordinary and ultimate aspect to it. So in the process of using our attention to orient towards refuge, orient towards compassion of bodhicitta, we actually being introduced already to a very central theme in the whole of the teaching, which is that there is a Buddha nature, as it's often called, a real nature, a true nature, a being state that is actually already present in us. And that is always our ground, actually. And through the practices of refuge and bodhicitta, bodhicitta means mind of enlightenment. It really means an intention to become enlightened, to benefit all beings. We'll hear more about that this morning. In both of these cases, in cultivating refuge and bodhicitta, we have both a kind of ordinary or conventional perspective that we are learning that is important, and we also have an opportunity in time to open to this ultimate, precious, intimate, and perfect nature that we already have. This is very significant. Actually, in all the Buddhist traditions, it is present. It has particular emphasis in the tradition that we're following here in terms of practice, which is to say the Longchen Nyingthig, the heart essence of the vast expanse, which itself is a very significant tradition within Nyingma, the most ancient of the Tibetan forms of Buddhism. And if some of these words are not familiar to you yet, they will be, that's all. So let's begin with a little bit of practice, which will also open into a teaching. We'll begin. Okay. We'll begin, as we have done, by finding your posture, your anchoring really in the lower part of your body, your opening up of your spine, elongating, kind of like a flower, really, or a tree, grounded, rooted in something very solid in this earth, and also open to space. And sometimes we remind ourselves that actually each one of you, each one of us, is right now seated directly above the center of the earth. And there's support coming to you from there. And sometimes just recollecting this will, in a very natural way, invite you, especially the lower part of your body, to relax and allow yourself to be held by the earth, by your cushion, by your chair. Finding that balance between being comfortable and relaxed, and also quite open and spacious in terms of your mind, and also clear. And to help the elongation, the gentle elongation of your spine, your chin is tucked in just a little bit, and you can feel how that swan-like state of your neck then is furthering the elongation of your spine. And it's not just that it's longer, but it's stronger. So this is your central axis, really, of your body, of your energy. And when it is strong in a relaxed way, it helps all the rest of you, your arms, which are hanging off, something like silk draped over a hanger. It allows more relaxation in your shoulders, in your neck, in your mouth, in your cheeks. Relaxation, in a way, is a mysterious process, like so many processes of our practice. Something that needs to be allowed, can't control. But sitting in this way is a good way to allow and make space for deep relaxation and at the same time alertness. So as we've been doing, take a moment to place your attention on your breath. And having placed it on your breath, allow your attention to rest on your breath. To move right on your breath as your breath moves in, your breath moves out, with a little more attending emphasis on your exhale. But not so that you're changing your breath in any way at all. And you may find that you're able to ride your breath and rest on your breath, even though memories, thoughts, and so on arise. They just swim away, and you stay focused on your breath, and that's fine. Your eyes are a little bit open, but not really focused on anything. Your attention is on your breath, and especially on the sensation of your breath as it moves through your body. Allowing your breath to bring your attention deep into your body and your being. And at some point you may recognize that you've gone off on a tangent in your mind and forgotten your breath, and somehow you've woken up to that distraction. You acknowledge it as having been a distraction. And again you place your attention on your breath and rest there. So we'll do this for several minutes. Silence together. And as you sit here in the open and quiet space of your own mind state, consider for a moment what actually brings you here. Why are you seeking out some way of practice? Is there something that you are seeking to relieve yourself of? Perhaps stress, perhaps some patterns of behavior that are hard to change, but you're aware that they are not optimum for you. Perhaps because you sense you have some potential for expanding and deepening your way of being in the world. And you're seeking, in that sense, refuge from those things which prevent you from doing so. So just reflect for a moment. Maybe you can come up with one or two quite specific things that you, in some sense, are seeking relief from, that you, in some sense, really, in relation to these things, are seeking refuge. Harvey and I will sing an invocation while you reflect in that way. And whatever it is that you're identifying as that which you would seek refuge from, away from, you can be sure that there are infinite numbers of beings, probably some of them in this room, who are seeking relief from some of those same things. So when we take refuge, we do it with a sense that we are seeking protection, and that we are doing it with all the other living beings in this universe who also have their own need for safety, succor, and refuge. Starting with our close family. Feel that your father, seated on your right, and of course, whatever feelings or issues you might have with your father, they may also be present, and they may also be part of what your need or understanding of refuge is. Your father and your male relatives, brothers, cousins, uncles, grandfather, son, they're all on your right. Maybe some male relatives you haven't thought of for years. They're here too. And on your left is your mother and your female relatives, aunts, sisters, cousins, daughters, grandmothers. So there they all are, and you're all in this together. And in front of you are any beings with whom you find difficulty. And behind you and all around you, all the living beings of the entire universe. So as far as your mind can imagine that space extends, it's all filled with living beings. Now you don't have to work at this in a sort of very... it's not like you're painting a picture exactly, but the sense that the space is filled with beings, and all of them have identified very clearly what it is they need refuge in relation to. And you can even think of a moment when really things were terribly difficult. A phone call came with terrible news, a letter came with terrible news, an accident happened, you were in danger, someone you loved was in danger, and this feeling that we all human beings have sometimes is, help me, help me. Whether we believe in God, in biblical sense or not, we know what it is to call out for help. In response to that call, there appears before you in space, which you can imagine for now as an orb of orange light. It's the embodiment and expression of all compassion, all refuge, all wisdom, in the person of Guru Rinpoche, we'll talk about in a bit. Can be an orange orb of light for now, but the point is that it is radiant with qualities of wisdom, compassion. It is refuge. So now when we sing refuge, these 4 lines on page 22, I think, of your booklet that we've been singing before, it's with a sense of coming before a presence that is truly and deeply embracing, that actually has a power and capaciousness and responsiveness to your particular situation. And so we sing with that sense of asking for support. We've already identified a support that comes from the center of the earth in a kind of embodied way. Now we're looking for a support that opens up our spiritual capacities. So we sing this. We sing it in English, Tibetan, and English. In page 12, thank you. It's page 12. In 3 real jewels, 3 root bliss-filled ones, channels, winds, bright orbs, this Bodhi mind, essence, nature, moving love mandal, until full Bodhi I seek refuge. Kunchok sum ngete shek zawa sum, zalung tigle rangshing janjub sem, Ngo rang shing tu cheking gorla, janjub nimbe bardu jub suchi. In 3 real jewels, 3 root bliss-filled ones, channels, winds, bright orbs, this Bodhi mind, essence, nature, moving love mandal, until full Bodhi I seek refuge. And in response to this, light now streams down from this orb of wisdom and compassion. And as soon as these rays of light touch you, your family, all the universe of beings with you, but especially as soon as it touches you, you dissolve into light. And as light are drawn up into this luminous orb and melt into it, light to light, heart to heart, mind to mind. Your mind is now totally mixed with the enlightened mind of compassion and wisdom, in which you took refuge, in which you now have become. And gently imagining that you are now a luminous light yourself, you begin to dissolve from the outside in, like mist vanishing from a window pane, dissolving in until it comes to the very, very center of this orb of light that you are. With one last drop of light that you are. which now gently melts into space. And for one tiny moment, or longer, you have dissolved into space, which means you're experiencing some aspect of your being, actually. And then when thoughts again begin to arise, like clouds born in space, thoughts are born in the open expanse of your own mind. And once again you resume your ordinary position as yourself, your father, mother, family, friends all around you. And once again, the luminous Lama, Guru Rinpoche, or for now, this luminous orb of light, in either case, wisdom and compassion, is before you in space. And recognizing that all living beings seek refuge, we acknowledge our intention to practice in order to benefit them, first by coming into realization ourselves, so that we have a real light to share with them. And we sing the verse of Bodhicitta. When we sing Bodhicitta, we can keep our hands on our knees. It's a very relaxed posture, because we're orienting toward truly profound relaxation into our real nature. Oh, like moons in water, sights deceive us. We ever roam bound in cyclic chains, so all may rest in their clear mind sphere. I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. Ho nato nang wachude zun reji, kor walugu jundu jambe dro, rang rega sa ying sung al sa cheer, teme shi ngang ne semje do. Oh, like moons in water, sights deceive us. We ever roam bound in cyclic chains, so all may rest in their clear mind sphere. I raise Bodhi through four boundless states. And now the luminous Lama, splendid with the qualities of wisdom and compassion, dissolves into light and melts like snow into a lake, into your own heart and mind. And all of those qualities are unified with your own mind stream. Just sit with that for a moment and feel whatever it is you're feeling. And placing your attention once more on your breath, rest your attention on your breath. And we'll do that for just a few minutes until the sound of the bell. So in some sense, refuge is like making friends in a really deep way. It's also something that is just a very ordinary human sort of aspiration. If you remember being about 4 years old and having stubbed your toe or somehow fallen and your elbow's bleeding or your knee, and what do? You run to mom or dad or a big sister. Or if you can't, you feel kind of unhappy because you want somebody to hold you in a very real sense, to hold you, to give a holding for your anxiety, and also to help you out, to say, okay, we need to wash this now. We're going to put some mercurochrome on it, and here's a Band-Aid. And, you come home from school and you're hungry. And if you're lucky, mom or someone has laid out something for you to eat. And you feel safe in the world. You feel there's a place for you in the world. You feel that somebody understands your needs and is looking after you. So, when we come to practice, it's really quite important what our orientation and our attitude is. And with the cultivation of refuge, we're cultivating a sense that we are beings, in fact, who need help, who need support. We are not isolated and independent. We don't get to enlightenment on our own. It's actually more and more we see about relationship. We're open. We're a little bit vulnerable. Sometimes when you're little, maybe you don't want to run to mom. That may be past 4 or 5. Now you're 8, 9, 10, 11, right? You don't need anybody's help. You don't tell mom when you got a sore throat because you don't want to stay home from school, and you don't want anybody to know you're sick because you want to do what they're not going to let you do if they find out that you're sick. And we also all have this in us, right? Don't help me. Men who are supposedly unwilling to ask for directions. It's not just men. We all have an aspect in us where we feel independent. I'm going to do it. And we might feel that way about the spiritual path too. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make myself do it. Well, we do need discipline in life in general, spiritual practice. We need to set aside some time. But this sense that I'm tough and I can do it on my own, you think about what that does to your own sense of what you are as a being. It kind of encloses you in a very tight structure. It actually reinforces a false sense of being independent, kind of existent. It reinforces a sense of self, a sense of being a kind of human that is unrelated to others. Now, our culture really, in our state, the lone rider, the lone ranger, independent, doesn't need anybody, takes care of himself out on the wild. It's a kind of ideal in our culture, more than in many cultures. Which isn't to say that people in other cultures have an automatic end to this process that we're engaging in, but we need to be aware of our own. So if you think about it, so we sit down to practice, and as we talked about yesterday, as Harvey has been talking about it, as we begin to cultivate attention, right, we gain awareness of the kinds of patterns that run us, the kinds of reactions that we have in life in general. And all of these patterns sort of stacked up together constitute what we call me, what we call a self. All this reactivity, the fear, the anxiety, the incapacity that we see in ourselves, the pride that we see, all of these patterns that we run constitute what we call the self. And the idea that we are this kind of independent self is actually the center around which all of these patterns arise. So it makes sense that if we begin to look at ourselves in a new way, it's actually going to shift how we are in relationship to our patterns, in relationship to our suffering, that means, and in relationship to the causes of our suffering. So how are we really? When we take refuge, we see ourselves as in need of support. We see ourselves as capable of a relationship with some being, some power, some process that can support us. And so we have a little bit of awareness of our own vulnerability. And that awareness makes us a little softer. That awareness makes us a little more receptive. And we need that receptivity to grow, actually. You know, if you've cut your arm and you say no when mom approaches you with soap and water and a Band-Aid, which we do sometimes, then there's some kind of help we're not going to get. And there's some kind of allowing of ourselves to be cared for that we're unwilling or afraid to be open to. Because there's a way in which we feel safe when we feel we're enclosed in this, Lone Ranger kind of box, right? Nobody touch me. I don't need anybody to touch me. I'm safe. Nobody. And so refuge is already beginning to look at that. No, I'm not like that. I'm like a sick person in need of a doctor. If you go to a doctor, it's very productive if you're going to listen to what they say. Doesn't mean you don't ask questions. You might consult more than one doctor, but you're basically hopefully putting yourself in a position where this person who has more knowledge than you do about your own illness is somebody you're going to listen to. Otherwise, there's no relationship. And sometimes we don't like to go to doctors for that very reason. They might tell us that we're sick. and we don't want to acknowledge, our pain or our wounds. So refuge is a place of really reorienting how we are in the world as in need of help and receptive to help, which actually is a very particular kind of strength. And something else happens that we've talked about here before. When we feel, I need help, and there is something larger than me where I can seek help, something important shifts. Now, what that something larger than me is, of course, varies a lot in different traditions, but even people who don't consider themselves religious, love to go into nature and feel part of nature. Or look up at the starry sky at night and feel part of this vast, mysterious, really very beautiful universe. And when we allow ourselves to feel part of something larger, that means really that our sense of what we are as beings has expanded, just like that. And it's a very powerful shift. Gregory Bateson famously wrote about this in terms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've mentioned this, I think, sometime in the past few weeks. Some of you may have been here. But it's a very important observation that he makes. Why? So there's a parallel between people who go to Alcoholics Anonymous and those of us who practice, right? We are all in a situation of recognizing a certain kind of addiction. There's substance addiction, but there's also pattern addiction. So even if we're free of addiction to certain kinds of substances, we're addicted to, we're addicted to how we see ourselves. We're addicted to cyclic existence, is the Buddhist way of saying it. We're addicted to our habits. And if you don't think you're addicted to your habits, try to change one or two of them. And all kinds of reasons come up about why, today is not the day to begin a diet. Today is not the day to start your regular practice. Today is not the day to take your vitamins, right? These are very simple things, and even those things, speaking personally, no, today I don't want to do it, right? So and actually what we learn, and what Alcoholics Anonymous has made famous as a kind of wisdom of our culture, is that we really can't face our addiction through willpower alone. A lot of people try. People try to become enlightened through willpower alone too, or try to become better people through willpower alone. Now, we do need effort, we do need stick-to-itiveness, we do need a certain kind of training, a certain kind of discipline. And that training and that discipline is enriched and furthered when we open up to something larger than ourselves to help us with it. Otherwise, we get into a kind of fight. Me against this habit. But the habit will fight back. And then we'll kind of raise the ante and say, no, well, I couldn't start the diet today, but tomorrow I'm not going to eat anything. So maybe you don't eat anything tomorrow, but you can't keep that up. Willpower has real limits, especially when it's a kind of false kind of control. It's not really being in your body. It's not really being in who you really are. We have to acknowledge on a spiritual path, in life in general, in AA, that, we need to shift our perspective. Einstein has a famous saying, it's often posted on Facebook, something like, you can't solve a problem through the same methods that got you into it. So what got us into our habits is a sense that we are independent and self-powered and have a lot of self-control, and the more of it we exercise, the better. That's how we got here. So we're going to have to do something a little different. Refuge is doing something different. Bateson says that as soon as you, for example, in AA, say, I can't control my addiction, I'm looking for a higher power to help me, just saying that, which is a form of refuge, is kind of opening up the boundaries of the self, just like that. It's actually changing. In his words, it changes the epistemology of the self. It changes how you understand what you are. No longer this self-enclosed, tightly wound bundle of feistiness that's going to fight your way to, reality and a more relaxed and pleasant life, but someone who's really open to something else coming in and serving you and helping you. So it's very significant. Now, the particular refuge verse that we say, which came in vision to Jigme Lingpa, who was doing, he did 2-3-year retreats in central Tibet, a very famous cave in Samye Chimpuk, not far from Lhasa. And he had a vision in which he was carried off to the Bodhinath Stupa in Kathmandu, Nepal, which is one of the oldest stupas, if not the oldest stupa in the Himalayas. A stupa is a reliquary. It also embodies the mind and the embodiment of enlightened mind, expression of enlightened mind. And in his vision, he was flying over. It's quite far from central Lhasa, a lot of mountains in between too. But in his vision, he got there very easily, and as he was flying over the stupa, he had the experience that the Dakinis, these wisdom women, literally those sky dancers, sometimes it's translated, traveler in space, these very, very exquisite kind of wisdom beings who are female, gave him a yellow scroll on which was inscribed in a kind of symbolic language called Dakini writing, something that he took with him. He actually ate it, and he said that when he ate this, he felt that the whole of the teachings were like printed on his mind. So this is a very powerful experience, and it's very powerful actually in the recent history of Buddhism as well, because then he went back to his retreat and over time decoded this writing and revealed the heart essence of the vast expanse, which includes this refuge prayer and also the Bodhicitta prayer. So it's considered something to have been revealed in a state of being open to the wisdom that is somehow actually nascent in reality itself, and it didn't come out of some kind of idea or intellectual work. And really after that he became an extraordinary scholar, although he hadn't studied much. As he said, he felt that all of the wisdom, all the writings was just printed on his mind. He's a very significant figure, and from time to time we talk more about his story, and also you can read about him.
He's in the right lower corner of that tanka.
And he's in the right lower corner of this tanka. The center of this tanka is Adzong Trukpa, who in the 20th century had visions of Jigme Lingpa, and who really helped bring this transmission into the 20th century. And our teacher, Adzong Rinpoche, is considered to be a reincarnation of Jigme Lingpa, and also in his previous life was the flesh and blood son of Adzong Trukpa, who died in 1924. So that's just some of the, what shall we say, the mythos, the energy around this verse. If you're interested in reading about Jigme Lingpa, Tulku Tundup's book, Masters of Meditation and Mystery, his lovely narrative of him, and I talk about him a little bit and his story in my Heart Essence of the Vast Expanse. It's one of the heart stories of the tradition. Everybody grows up knowing, you know. So, but what is this verse of refuge? It's extremely significant teaching. It actually contains, unlike most verses of refuge, which will say quite simply, and which is also very wonderful for us to know, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So principally Buddhists take refuge in Buddha, the awakened one, and also in his teaching, the Dharma, and also in the spiritual community, the Sangha. Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This is what is called the three jewels, or the triple gem, as it's sometimes translated. When we take refuge in the three jewels, as we do in the first line, in three real jewels, first line of the first verse, we are talking about this refuge in the three jewels, in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We take refuge in Buddha because Buddha is awakened. Enlightenment means to have completely eliminated all kinds of limiting factors. I said earlier, and we often say, that fundamentally, since we all have Buddha nature, everything short of the enlightened state is something that is in some sense artificial and foreign to who we really are. And it is also something that obscures who we really are. So we take refuge in the Buddha as somebody who has gotten rid of all of those veils, all of those obscurations that prevent us from seeing what we really are. You know, we have, if sometimes you're about to take a test, let's say, even a driving test. I think everybody's a little nervous before their driving test, or a test in school. And all of our sense of inadequacy comes out, or a sense of bad luck. Oh, I'll never get anywhere. I can't do this. I'm going to fail geometry for sure. Can't learn another language. French, grammar, ooh. You know, and we feel we just can't do it. And that's our sense of who we are in relationship to whatever the particular task is. And then we meet a good teacher, and they say, oh, just relax. Put your hands on the wheel like this. You know, don't slam on the brake. Push it down gently. Learn how to have an open vision, not just focused on the car in front of you. You know, very specific things. And then we realize, oh yeah, I can do that. I can learn that. Our idea of who we were in relationship to this task actually obscured our capacity to do it. This happens a lot in life. That's why we need good teachers. Say, yeah, you can do it. You just don't know yourself yet. So this is writ large, magnified many times on the spiritual path. We actually have no idea how much we're capable of. I also think sometimes I have wondered with the really amazing teachers that Harvey and I have studied with, some of you have met. I mean, why do they bother? You know, we seem so hopeless. You know, when I think of us going to study with Keisen Sambo in 1977 and he's spending 5-6 hours a day just with us. 2 people who barely spoke Tibetan well enough to, you know, connect with him, didn't know anything, but were quite determined, I will say. And, you know, and he had a whole school of students. It's not like he didn't have other things to do. And he spent all this time with us. And, you know, I wasn't, I'll speak for myself, you know, particularly promising, really. Just kids who ended up in... But we had put a good bit of energy into being, you know, we had done a lot of practice, actually. He told us we had to do a certain amount of practice in order to get to the next level of teaching, and we had done that. So we had, you know, we had put energy out there, and we were committed. That was our one virtue, I would say. We were committed. And he spent all this time with us, and, you know, we were not, it wasn't like, oh, I got it, I understand, every day I'm growing, and it wasn't like that at all, you know. We were like bumbling along, and what did you say, and 3 days ago you said this, and what is this, and it was really, and I would wonder, we have wondered, you know, ever since, really, why he, and also Azar Rinpoche, who teaches tens of thousands of people in Tibet, and as I've told some of you before, one time at our mandala, he was teaching a beginner's group. They were brand new. They weren't necessarily committed. They were just there. And there were 3 of them. And those of us, others of us who got other teachings from him were going off for the day in the meadow and doing some kind of practice. And then we'd come back, you know, for lunch 4 hours later. And he was still sitting there with those 3 people, teaching them. He's one of the greatest lamas in Tibet. And so why would these people do that? I think partly it's because they understand what we don't yet understand, which is the tremendous potential that in fact every living being has. And that's how, you know, the Dalai Lama greets everyone with a smile, sometimes a hand holding or even a hug, as if, you know, you were the most wonderful, promising, beautiful person in the whole universe. And he sees you that way because that's the wisdom eye, actually. Everyone is that promising. We don't know how long it will take to live out that promise, but it's definitely there. And one of the things that we experience in taking refuge is that we're making a connection with some being who sees us like that. We can't even see ourselves like that yet. In taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, Buddha also was not always an enlightened person. 1,000 lifetimes of struggling and sometimes doing not such great things, but then doing a lot of great things to realize this potential, to overcome all that obstructs our...
Gary, where are we at on the CD?
Okay. All that obstructs our ability to recognize who and what we really are. That's what an enlightened being is, has overcome all of those obstructions and has manifested the full flourishing of their actual capacity. That's what enlightenment literally means as it's translated into Tibetan. So we take refuge in that state, in someone, in that possibility, which is a possibility for us. We don't take refuge in the sense, oh, they're so great and I can never be like them. We take refuge in this. Fundamentally, we're taking refuge in what is possible for us. You know, when you go to school, you take, in a certain sense, you take refuge in your teacher who's going to teach you Spanish, because they see you as somebody who's capable of learning Spanish. And you can't do it on your own. They're going to help you. Now, in taking refuge in the three bliss-filled ones, the Sugatas, that's another epithet for the Buddha. Enlightened being is actually always filled with bliss. This is something that we learn more about in the teachings of Tantra, the higher teachings, that enlightenment, this state of encrusting and containing and limiting and obscuring what we really are, actually hides from us a great natural capacity for bliss. It may sound crazy, but actually in all the traditions where people speak about deep experiences in meditation, they speak of ecstasy, they speak of bliss, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Sufi, which suggests that there is something deep in the human organism, when we get deep into our actual nature, that is blissful. And that is a premise. And that is a promise. And so we take refuge in that also. And we take refuge in it says the channels, winds, and drops. This refers to the subtle body, which really gets talked about in the more esoteric teachings. We're going to say a little bit about the stages of the path today, just a very little bit. There are stages to the path. And this refuge is particularly has the quality of being a refuge in all of the stages of the path. In Nyingma, we talk about 9 stages or 9 vehicles. 3 of Sutra, 3 of Tantra, and 3 really of highest Yoga Tantra, which is Dzogchen, which is the refuge into essence, nature, moving love mandal. That's actually a description from the point of view of Dzogchen, the great completeness, the great perfection, which is the highest of the 9 vehicles. It is what all of our practices here are oriented to, and actually all of our backlit by. It's not just something that you get to after you've done a lot of practice, although there are stages of approach to it. It's something that, where the way that we're talking about Buddha nature, the way that we're talking about how refuge and all of our practice actually open us to our own nature, this is all backlit by Dzogchen, the great completeness. Finally, our refuge is actually our own nature. So when I said earlier that in taking refuge we learn about ourselves in both ordinary and ultimate ways, I mean that we learn about, in a kind of ordinary or conventional sense, we feel that refuge is something out there, as we imagine Guru Rinpoche to be. Guru Rinpoche was prophesied to be the second Buddha by Shakyamuni Buddha, and is regarded in Tibet as a Buddha, as a second Buddha, he is called. and a figure worthy of taking refuge in and directly connected to Jigme Lingpa. Jigme Lingpa had many visions of Guru Rinpoche. Actually, that's what precipitated this whole receiving of revealed teachings that I described earlier. So we're contacting, as we feel Guru Rinpoche is here, we're sort of contacting our own possibility. We're contacting a bridge to the nature that we don't yet know what we are. By the time we get to the third line of the refuge, Longchen Nyingthig, essence, nature, moving love mandal, we're actually describing our own nature. And we're actually acknowledging that our true refuge, our ultimate refuge, is here. Now this is something that Zen has a famous saying that if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Very rude statement in Buddhist context. And it's really saying something quite similar here. If ultimately we don't want to feel that refuge is something outside us, we feel that it's in us. And this is indicated also by when we dissolve up into Guru Rinpoche, into this orb of light as we did, we're melting into this state of enlightenment. We're unifying with it. And when we dissolve into space, Jigme Lingpa says, this is an expression of our recognizing our real nature, which is something like space. The Dharmakaya, it's called. That's actually our nature. It's actually our enlightened nature. So when we take refuge in this way, we at least symbolically, and over time it becomes quite a teaching in and of itself to do this dissolving. To dissolve into space is to let go of all of those patterns that cause us trouble. And then we arise again. And we'll stop with that.
Okay. Sorry. You want to break or you want to
What do you think? Should we? I don't know. So relax a little. Have a mini break if you want to get some, if you get a snack. It won't take too long, but you can relax a little bit. Should we get out any of this stuff? You don't have that much time.
No, it's 2 hours and a brief time. So what do we want to do? Bodhichitta? Do we want to talk about the overview?
I don't know. Should we see where people are with this? I mean, you can talk. I think we should talk about Bodhichitta, even if it's a little brief. And you can give people, minimally I can give people, what do I do with it? This handout. It won't take very many.
We didn't get that many.
But a lot of people know about this already.
I think rather than give up
I think it's going to be confusing.
So do we have to have a particular class to
No, maybe it
do
is.
the curriculum?
But maybe we could give out this and talk just about this.
What's this?
These 3 pages. Because it's pretty, at least it puts the attentional stuff in context. I don't know what to say. Quite frankly.
I tried to turn backwards.
Well, for people who don't have it, I could give this out. No?
Well, maybe I do. How long should I talk about Bodhichitta?
No, I mean, our whole course is in a way on Bodhichitta. So maybe just kind of briefly.
Okay. Well, should I take about 10 minutes and then we'll take 15 minutes for this, or 10 minutes for that, and some questions?
Yeah. Should we have questions now to see where people are at, or what? I haven't even talked about the refuge tree. Let me just finish off and tell where people can read more about this. Okay.
She says
We're good?
So we're ready? You want to start?
Maybe give, what do you think?
sure.
12:34.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take 3 to 5 minutes right now. You should probably not take more than, I'm sorry, but 10 or 12 minutes?
Yeah.
Is there any time you can, are you coming back to any of the? You're not coming back anymore.
And not reliably.
Okay.
You think so? Okay. Well, I will tell you.
Now we can tell people where to read about this. We can talk, I can talk about it a little bit more on Monday as part of Bodhichitta. Say whatever you can say, pithily, I think. When we do refuge, in principle, we feel that Guru Rinpoche is in front of us in space, and actually this whole, this framed image above the round table over there is what's called over here, as you walk in the door, is called a refuge field of refuge, and that's what you feel is there. But you can just focus on Guru Rinpoche to start with. And it's a splendid assembly of all the beings who are part of this lineage, which slowly, if you like, you can learn about. If you want to read about refuge, you can begin with the chapter in Tantric Practice in Nyingma on refuge. You can also read the chapter on refuge in Words of My Perfect Teacher. And I suppose most briefly you can read my translation of Jigme Lingpa's whole liturgy in Heart Essence of the Vast Expanse. And we'll give you some handouts which have the names of other books that are related. But if you want to, that are related to kind of getting acquainted with this world that you've entered, if you'd like to. Those books are particularly accessible, and we recommend them. And don't underestimate what can open. It's a very simple practice in a way. It may seem strange right now to you. Certainly was strange equally to us when we first learned it. But it really is a door to many, many things. And you can, at your own pace, feel into it, see how it feels, to get connected with it, and talk to us. You know, we're here to support you in that exploration. Well, there's more to say about refuge, but we won't say more about it this morning. We want to. Do you want to go right on, or should we have some questions?
We can see if there are questions.
Are there any questions right on this? Yeah, Chris.
Wait.
Sorry.
Is there a mic? Microphone. Chris.
So when we are in the field of refuge and we have all the beings around us, and then we have Guru Rinpoche's orange light in front of us, and we kind of melt into that light and then go into the space. In the visualization, what happens to all the people around us?
Well, everybody else is. So you're there with all the universe of beings seeking refuge. The field of refuge is Guru Rinpoche and the beings around him, or just Guru Rinpoche. And the light comes down and it touches everybody. And everybody melts into light and dissolves into Guru Rinpoche. So they're getting enlightened too.
Other questions or comments?
It will be, yes. Justin TV. You mean this recording? Yes.
Specifically on Justin TV. It's not on our website, it's on the Justin TV website. And we can check with us, we can give you
Gary
the...
can tell you. We posted, do we have it on Facebook now?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Gary posted the instructions on Facebook.
So on the Dawn Mountain Facebook site, there are instructions on how to get this recording on Justin TV, to tie that all together.
Thanks for asking.
Any other questions?
Tantric practice in Nyingma describes very precisely also this whole process. Sorry? Those books are available here, yeah.
Huh?
I don't know. What do you think? When we do prostrations, as we did, that's what we're doing in the morning when we bow down, that's also taking a refuge. That's placing us in the position of somebody who is offering homage. In one sense, homage to the Buddhas. In another, even more profound sense, homage to what we actually are. And that's always important to remember. The Buddha is actually not some kind of big boss or a guru, or it's not some kind of big boss. It's a mirror for us to find out who and what we really are. So Buddhists will do 3 prostrations in the morning and 3 before going to bed at night. And it's just a nice way to remind us of our relationship and the support that's available from this whole kind of system.
We wanted to say something about Bodhicitta. The Bodhi is realization, awakening. Chitta is mind. So it's the mind which is oriented towards realization. And this verse is just as jam-packed as the first verse is, with an enormous amount of allusion to various practices and various stages of practice. The Bodhicitta motivation in many ways encapsulates the pith of the view of practice and the motivation for practice. And in many ways it is an encapsulation. Last night we were talking about the 4 truths of suffering, the cause, the cessation, and the path. So the first truth is in the second line: we ever roam bound in cyclic chains. And the cyclic chains are referring to being born, living, growing old, getting sick, and the pain of dying, and then once again being reborn, growing old, getting sick, dying, birth, old age, sickness, and death. is whatever the environment, whether it be in the Buddhists talk about a variety of realms, whatever realm it may be, we go through those changes. The cause is in the first line, where we're deceived by appearances. Now, this is in a way a little bit easier to describe than to realize. It's way easier to describe than to realize. It's not just in a way. But I have a friend and colleague named Shinzen Young who I think very, very succinctly sums things up when he says that realization really has to do with a figure-ground shift. And so, I guess in art you would talk about there's the figure and there's the ground. So, you have maybe someone standing in a wide open space and the painting is about the person in the front, and then the ground is everything that surrounds them. Well, we live our lives absorbed in the figure. And Tibetan words are a little bit different. I mean, all languages' words are a little bit different from one another, but we say ho natso nangwa chude zunregi. So natso means various, and nangwa is the word that we translate as sights, and it's actually sight is in some ways a good has some of the varied connotations that nangwa may have. Nangwa can mean what we see, the objects of sight. It can be the act of seeing, and it can be the subjective sort of sense of seeing. Mostly it means what appears, but it can be the experience of seeing, or it can be the action of seeing. The seer, the seeing, and the seen can all be being referred to by nangwa. Sense of seer. And I sort of parse it out that way because what happens in ordinary experience is that we get identified, immersed in, centered in, absorbed in, passive attentionalized into a dualistic perspective, and that is our ground. So everything we do, feel, say, think, experience is contextualized in the ground of I'm separate from everything else in the universe. And in Western culture, on top of that all, we've taken that separation to what, from the perspective of the rest of the traditional world, would be considered absurd extremes of separation. In more traditional cultures, there's more of a tie-in between the person and the environment. But in ours, we're at war with everything as a sort of an autonomous self. That sense of ground of ourselves as autonomous, separate individuals in opposition to everything else is our ground. It's our figure. I'm sorry, I've been stating it wrong. It's our figure. We're absorbed in that figure. That's sort of the foreground of who we are. We're sort of like this isolated figure, and our experiences are all experienced in that kind of dualistic figure configuration. The ground and the cessation of suffering is alluded to in the third line, which is very, very sweet. So all may rest in their clear mind sphere. And the Tibetan's just a little bit richer in terms of detail, but it uses a lot of very profound words that are hard to sometimes fully understand except with experience. It says Rangrik, which is one's own sort of profound presence awareness. Osel, clear light. Yin is the matrix or womb, And Nyalso is to rest. So in order to rest in the womb of the clear light of one's own presence awareness. So that's the cessation of suffering in terms of the four truths. It is the third, there's a cessation. And that is the ground. That is the vastness of space. That is the ground of all experience. And so practice is to allow us to move away from this dualistic figure stuff of I'm in opposition to everything, I'm dualistically in relationship to everything. Those are the first line. We're like moons in water. It's like moons and water seem real, just as our experience seems real, that everything's dualistic and everything's sort of solid, da-da-da-da-da-da. But we're absorbed in this kind of figure world. It all flips with realization where the clear mind sphere, that's where all of the energy would be in a kind of holistic, we would be feeling like space. So instead of being like every individual cloud in space that looks at every other cloud and says, oh, you're a gray cloud, you're a white cloud, I'm a black cloud, whatever, we would be the space, the ground, the clear mind sphere that holds that all. And so there's that switch from being the figure into the ground. We're then a being knowing versus a dualistic knowing. Our being and our knowing are in this vast holding versus all these little minute experiences of subject, object, subject, object, subject, object. And the path then is through developing the four boundless states, which are equanimity, love, compassion, and sympathetic joy, which is all of what we're talking about on Tuesday nights. So it's a beautiful summary of both how we're individually stuck and where I raise Bodhi, meaning I'm raising the intention for my enlightenment so that I can deal with not only myself, who gets stuck in all of these false appearances of dualism, which are like moons in water. They have all of the ultimate reality of moons and water. But I'm doing this not only for myself, but I'm doing this for all sentient beings as well, who are similarly confused and into dualism. And so I'm cultivating equanimity, love, compassion, sympathetic joy, which we talk about on Tuesday nights, so we're not going to elaborate right now, in order to establish both myself and all beings away from the confusion of seeing things as real, which have as much reality as moons and water, but rather to allow people to, and because of that dualism, they're ensnared in the whole process of cyclic existence, but rather to allow us all to rest in our ultimate nature, which is the clear mind sphere. And it's I think it's very, very profound, and it takes a long time in practice to appreciate this, but the way we were teaching attention for the last 2 days, I think, is part of this. You know, we said we place our mind on the breath and then we rest there. Realization is something we rest into ultimately. We do a lot of work in order to ultimately rest. And it takes a lot of work to ultimately learn how to rest. But ultimately, we're not chugging our way into realization. We're resting into realization, which is a womb-like being knowing. And so this verse states that it's a guide to practice, and it's really a sort of a foretaste of how things work.
And how these work together also. So having stated this, sung this ode in a way to your own realization, this open sphere, this clear sphere, then, as we did this morning, the whole field of the enlightened beings, they melt into light and they melt into you. And so that's a moment to touch into, whatever you experience as that melts into you. A certain richness may become, even for only an evanescent moment, available to your sensibility. And it's a reminder that this is actually really where it all is. And likewise, this clear sphere that is at the center of this verse, in the refuge, as we do that, as we did this morning, we and all the other beings resolve into space, which, as I mentioned, is the expression of our real nature. There's something very like space, not a dead space, not like, the emptiness of a cup, but we know that space is the medium that's through which the sun shines. It's luminous. Everything can arise in space. Tremendous potential. That's also a clear sphere, that Dharmakaya. So in doing refuge and bodhicitta in the way that we do it, with this melting up and then being melted into, in both those cases we're unifying with the qualities that are intrinsic to the open sky of our real nature. So even before we've done much to learn, there is certain learning about, one's own nature and practices and so on, and these are part of them. They're already beginning to introduce us to something vaster of our nature, something vaster than we yet know. And this is what Jigme Limba calls a fruitional refuge. There's a causal refuge of taking, like in the first line of refuge, as I mentioned, where you're taking refuge as if in something external, so that you can become enlightened. But the resultant refuge, which is really there in both the third line of the refuge and also in the bodhicitta, and speaking of clear light, that's the real ultimate refuge, which is that ultimate state, which is what actually gives you refuge. So in these ways, these verses, particularly the refuge verse, are a kind of overview of the whole path. We begin with a dualistic sensibility. We learn that there's a luminosity associated with our nature. That's actually a tantric practice. And then finally we learn about the dynamism and open sky that is our real nature, which is Dzogchen. So it's actually all here. So in some sense, everything that you might learn or realize through the years is already here. And the more you learn and realize, the more you read these verses and realize how rich they are. And that's the very lovely thing about this kind of practice. You want to say something about the path? Or no?
About the path.
This?
Yeah.
You want to do this? So, insofar as the whole path has already been presented in a very abbreviated way, this ninefold path, I want to say just a little bit about the arc of the structure of the path as a whole, which is actually quite a topic in and of itself. When we speak of the path here in Dawn Mountain, we think of it in 4 phases. And I want to talk today a little bit about the first phase, and we have a handout here. The first phase really involves establishing a daily practice. And some of you have already done that. Then you're in the second phase, whenever that happens for you, or after it's happened for, we say, between 12 and 24 months. So you really have established as a daily practice. It's not a big question anymore whether you're going to meditate that day or not. You're going to do something. And that takes a while, and we understand how great a challenge that actually is in our culture. And we're here to support you in that and talk about that. How do you set up, given all the pulls on us in our lives, how do you set daily practice. Part of it is by beginning to value what practice can do for you. And then it becomes easier to make time for it. And the very first step for that is the cultivation of attention, as we've been doing. So this is something that is important throughout your life as a practitioner. And it's also something that, as Harvey said yesterday, if you do it, if you begin to do this cultivation of attention on a daily basis, you will see, and many of you have seen, there is some difference. It doesn't mean that everything, all your troubles go away completely and forever. No. But something shifts. You become more able to be aware of patterns without being sucked into them. And that's a very, very, very big thing. So that is the first thing that we really emphasize in this first phase. And the cultivation of attention will continue throughout all the phases. The ability to develop a daily practice also really depends on understanding, as I said, understanding its value for you. And that can be very individual, you know, and it's something worth talking about as a community, worth talking with us about. You know, if you're, you know, the way we act, I mean, obviously you have some orientation to practice. You're here. I mean, that's already quite a big step. A lot of people are driving by. They're not here. You're here. So that's a big step. So how can we support you? How can we all support each other? How can you support yourself in setting up a daily practice? One way is by recognizing what its value is for you and your life. You know, what's going to be meaningful to you at the end of the year when you think about how the year has been for you? How many movies you went to, how much TV you watched, how many emails you sent. This is what we spend our time on, truly. And yet, clearly there's something in us that longs for something other than that. Even though we're totally grabbed by all of these things, we have some other orientation also. Reading helps. One of the books I recommend here a lot is Happiness by Mathieu Ricard. It's not really a book about Buddhism, except it's totally infused with Buddhist principles. And he talks about human happiness and what really brings it about. And one of the things that is very conducive to happiness is cultivating the kinds of qualities that we're talking about. An ability to be present and attend instead of being sucked into everything. This is also part of the cultivation of equanimity that we've been talking about on Tuesday, Teaching Tuesdays. Happiness is also furthered by an open-hearted approach to life and to others. Compassion, goodness. This actually makes life more pleasant, more livable. So the Dalai Lama likes to talk, what is his word for it? Something like intelligent egoism, something like that. It's not quite the phrase. Intelligent selfishness. I think it's something like that. So be intelligently selfish. We're foolishly selfish. We think we're going to be happier by doing all the things that commercials tell us will make us happier, but actually just make them more money. You know, if we have the right car, the right clothes, the right externals, then we're going to be happier. But most of us actually know that that's not the case, but we still feel pulled because it's so strong. You know, we can't help but respond to the pulls in our culture. We are connected, and we're connected to everything around us. So the exhortation to be distracted, which if you think about it is like a central value of contemporary culture. Be thou distracted. Look at Facebook. Look at CNN. Look at the latest movie, the latest fashion. Be thou distracted. Don't sit still and realize that all of this is just ephemeral, because then you won't spend your money on all these distractions. But does it bring happiness? Mathieu's book is really great. I use it at Rice, and the students love it. They really love it. And I really recommend it. It's also a very gentle entree and a very profound entree into the kind of worldview that we're talking about. Science now agrees, studies of the brain, and Matthew talks a little bit about that also, that if you're intelligently selfish and cultivate these qualities that are actually good for you and actually contribute to your happiness, maybe that's a good idea to spend a little time on. So in terms of setting up a daily practice, one thing that is important is that you come to see its value for yourself. That's what's going to convince you. We can talk till we're blue in the face, which won't be particularly appealing. You know, you really have to see it for yourself, and that's why we are trying to provide an opportunity for you to begin to see this. So we practice together. Practicing together is very, very helpful. I want to ask you, as a focus group, we have practices on alternate Tuesdays, which by the close of this Losar period, if you've been coming pretty much and you would like to join, you will be invited to join. And there's some other things that we'd like to do, and we're wondering what works best for you. A weeknight, like an alternate Tuesday night, or is something like Saturday morning better? Or maybe it's the same. So, if we want to do things that are going to be useful to you, what works for you? How many Saturday morning is best? How many people is that? It doesn't matter so much. Okay, that's...
Wait. There were a lot of wiggles. Can we see...
Well, maybe we need to ask the question a better way. For how many of you is Saturday morning way better than a weeknight? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. For how many of you is a weeknight like
No, Tuesday night.
Tuesday, okay. Tuesday night way better than Saturday?
3.
So just about even. How many can make it to either? But you come to both. You come on Tuesdays, and you're here now.
But I have to wake up at...
Oh, I see. For Tuesdays. For Saturday. I see. Okay. Is Sunday any different? Sunday's better? Sunday's better. Interesting. Huh? For how many of you is Sunday the best?
Sunday's best for who? Sunday best.
Oh, for how many? Okay, and even if it's... Okay, that's helpful. So there's about 5 or 6 people.
I'm going to throw in one for the viewers. The Italian sangha is probably better on Saturday morning.
Oh.
My guess.
The Italian Sangha.
Are they listening?
Wow.
Hi.
It's on the Facebook.
Va bene. Ciao. How nice. So Sunday is better for the Italian?
No, Saturday.
Saturday. You imagine. Are there? If anybody is on the broadcast, let us know. But of course, the broadcast is actually available anytime. You can always download it. That's another thing. If you miss, thanks to our great tech team, starting with Sean and now Gary. They're the saints of the Dawn Mountain our technical capacity. So our Teaching Tuesdays are going to be available as a download. So if you have to miss, you can listen to it that way. I really encourage you not to substitute broadcasts for live coming if you can, because it's about community. It's totally about community, and seeing each other's faces is just a great encouragement to everyone. So at least come sometimes, but if sometimes you can't make it, like at least once a month, twice is really good. 4 times if you come to practices, then we really start to gel as a community and you start to feel supported.
So what, Sunday was best and then
It seemed like Sunday is best.
But
Well, Sunday we've already got the 11 to 12 program, so it would have to be either before that or after that. Is before that, so probably like 9:30 on a Sunday. Is that good for people? No.
For whom would that work? 9:30 Sunday morning?
Yeah, when we have children's...
1 hour, 2 hours.
An hour to an hour and a half.
An hour to an hour
And
a half.
or
What about
12
after Sunday,
12:30.
starting at noon?
12:30.
Oh, that seems to be better for more people? Really? Okay.
So we have 5 Saturday night.
What?
She wants to.
Go to party.
You want to party Saturday night, I see.
Wake up late.
Yeah, okay. Well, all right, that's very helpful to know, actually. In any case, we will have practices on alternate Tuesdays, and for those of you who can make that, please do, and we'll see what we can do about it. This will start after Losar. Well, we're meeting every day now, between now and the full moon of Losar, which is March 3rd. So, yes, this Tuesday. Definitely, please continue to come. Tomorrow is the regular Sunday practice at 11, and led by Terry, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday we're meeting at 6:30. Monday and Tuesday we're introducing another practice from Jigme Lingpa, practice of purification, Vajrasattva, which we'll introduce very gently. And the Thursday and Friday, Wednesday and Thursday, we're introducing the practice of green Tara, who is one of the great Dakinis I mentioned earlier. She is right here. And this is white Tara. She is an important source of refuge, maybe the most beloved female Buddha in the Tibetan tradition. We have a strong connection with her and like her company. And so the practice is really about inviting Tara. And then starting Friday night and Saturday and Sunday, we're going to do a formal practice of green Tara, which means we will be seated in rows, we'll have horns and bells and do fairly long sessions and keep the mantra going the whole time as well. It's a formal Tibetan practice, which is something, this will be the second time we've done it. We did it for the first time last year. So it's a retreat, actually. And for those of you who might like to come to that, we'll talk about what that is on Thursday and Friday. So at the end of this period... Wednesday and Thursday, thank you. So we're using this period, as you can see, to introduce quite a bit. And then, of course, it takes time to digest. And that's what the practice is, and that's what the Teaching Tuesdays are for.
Will we be upstairs tomorrow?
We're not meeting separately tomorrow.
Tomorrow is just the 11 o'clock. A guided meditation that Terry is leading. So we'll be back here on Monday at 6:30. Any questions? Think about it as they come up. Shall we give this out? Maybe wait.
Okay.
Shall we wait? Okay, for those of you who don't have it, by the way, this prayer book is also downloadable from our website. The link does work. And we might have some for sale also if you'd like to buy them. For those of you who don't have either this booklet downloaded or my book, and if you'd like to take home the Refuge and Bodhicitta verses with you so you can practice that, I only made a few sheets. I'll bring more on Monday, but you're welcome to take this if you like. Thank you. So if you're so inclined, see about doing Refuge and Bodhicitta in the morning and just see how that is for you, and then you'll have questions probably about how to do it. Okay, so we'll close with our closing. Where's the book?
Page 22. By this good may I swiftly once become a great guru, lead all beings, everyone, to reach to that very ground. Page 25, Long Life Prayer for His Holiness. In a pure land ringed by snow mountains, snows of bliss and benefit for all, Powerful Denzin Gyatso Chenrezi, lotus feet, please stay hundreds of years. Fill vast space with your activities. And then for Ajahn Pela Rinpoche, Om Swasti, flawless refuge, sources give blessings, teacher, protector, kind Dharma Lord. Herme Tupten Gyatso, wondrous good, lotus feet ever, deeds everywhere. Start on page 26 and then move to the top of page 27. Namo Guru, glorious, wise K. Bright Soon and kind Son, now that your work here has subsided, please think of our pains and suffering. We pray you quickly take form again. Om Swasti, Anne and Harvey, like the waxing moon, may your life and merit flourish, grow through the threefold skillful pundit's deed. Live long benefiting all you meet. By the true power of two truths, three jewels, three roots, Buddha's compassion, faithful Sangha and aspiration, may this prayer be realized at once. Okay, well, Dawn Mountain Prayer. Page 32, the prayer for Dawn Mountain. May there be a great fine new temple, great seat for all high practice learning, which has been spread in all directions, male and female yogis everywhere, practice and further the teachings there. Jennifer P. Nam, Jenny Piers, Devin's mother in the Bardo, Ann Glegg, Mrs. Ann Glegg, Amanda Glegg, Bethany, Bill, Michael, Lola's mom in the Bardo, Claire, Job, Fernando Lopez, Healing, Kiki, Anna, Opilius, Heinze, Teresita, Martha, Gerardo, Young Mai, Amy Jha, Haley Mosier, Job, Tina Borja, Rosa Glenn Riley and family, Emily Job, Matt Job, John, Shirley, Arlene, Yolanda, Jen, Andreas Reinhard, Colin, can you?
Oh, Celia Martinez.
Celia Martinez, sorry. Andre Alexander, Jennifer, Jenny Glegg, David Garcia, Bardo, Andres, Kiki, Ana, Opilius, Hense, Teresita, Fernando, Gerardo, J. Robert Bartlett, Linda Bartlett, Sharon, Buddy Henderson, Adam Brownstein, Lynn, David Merritt, Charles Fontenot, Sr., deceased, and his family, Martin Espinosa, Candy Clark, Mom, Nana, Bob, Elizabeth, Danae, Isabel, Emma, Richard Dyke Jr., deceased, Bobby, Kelly Whitman's mom, Bardo, Mark and Sharon Fowler, Ann G. Job, people of Tibet and Syria, Millie Schneider, Amanda Adams, Tanya Rhodes, Wendy Jones, Robert, Dawn, Mickey, Jen, Gail, Mike, Leah, Oliver, dog, recovery from surgery, Dad, Rudy Avila, Robert Irwin, Pamela Strait, and Dan, and Millie Schneider. Okay.
And the recitation after dedication on page 30. Another reminder of true nature.
Things, sounds, minds are God's mantras, true form, kayas, and wisdom in endless play. Through this profound and secret practice, Be one with the one, taste heart, take lay.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy New Year.